Chapter 7. Instantiating classes and optimizing performance. In BPMN-RPA you can create a visual flow that executes Python code. To call Python code, you have to set references by using the shape attributes. In this lesson we will have a closer look on how to optimize these references to call Python modules, initiate classes and call functions. We'll take a look at the Hello World Python module as we have used in our previous lessons. The module is saved in the temp directory of our system. A simple call to a function that is not part of a class is pretty straightforward. Let's look at a flow example. As you can see, this flow calls the dictionary in the first step and shows a message box in the second step. We'll open the return dictionary attributes. In the module field, enter the full path to the module, in this case C column /temp/hello_world.py. In the function field, we'll enter the name of the function to call, in this case return dict. To pass the output to the next shape in the flow, we will give our output variable the name $dict%. We won't need the class field, for the function isn't part of a class. We'll delete this attribute field. Also the shape description field isn't needed. In the message box attributes you can see that the shown value of the dictionary of our first step is the value that belongs to the key called test. Let's run the example from the command line. For our next example we have created a Hello World class module that looks like this. Now let's call the return list function. In a new flow we open the attributes of the return list shape and enter our reference values. In the module field we type C column /temp/hello_world_class.py. In this case we are using a class, so we enter hello_world in the class field. Finally we enter the name of the return list function in the function field and store the output in a variable called $list%. In the message box shape attributes we will show the last word in the list, so we'll use the zero-based index after the variable name. Again we run the example from the command line. As you see in the Hello World class, the initiation function of the class holds a variable called remember. To show the value of the remember variable in the message box, we will have to return the whole class from the first shape. Let's set the attribute references and run the example. You can imagine that when we want to create a flow that has multiple calls to functions of a class, you will have better execution performance when you create the class in the beginning of the flow and use its variable to call the functions in the other steps. Please also notice that the class variable will hold all the internal variables that were set since its creation. Therefore it is mandatory to pass the whole class as a variable when we want to use its internal variables in the other steps of the flow. To show you how it's done, we'll look at this example. In the first step we create an object of the Hello World class. In the second and third step we call different functions of that class by using the class variable in the class field. In this example we have also shown that the variables that you create by setting its name in the output variable field will be accessible throughout all the steps of the flow, until the end. If you want to call functions of Python libraries that are installed on your system, you don't have to include the full path to the module. For example, if you want to call the system function of the standard installed OS module to run the Notepad application, then the references must look like this. If you want to call a specific module of an already installed Python package, then you can do so by placing a dot between the package name and the module you want to reference. For instance, if you want to set a reference to the today function in the utils.py module of the date_util package, then set the value of the module field to date_util.utils. For each function call you make or class variable you create, the shape must have exact the same attributes as the function or class has as input parameters. For instance, if you want to create this class, you must create a shape for it with these attributes. And if you want to call this function, then you must apply these attributes to the shape. Shape attributes are not case sensitive. You can either create a class object variable or call a function of the class. You can't do both at the same time in one shape. The BPMN-RPA library also ships with some accompanying scripts. The functions in these scripts aren't part of any class. Most of these functions are incorporated in the standard shapes for the Draw.io and Microsoft Visio application. If you manually want to set a reference to these functions, you can do so by entering the name of the module without the full path, but you will have to include the .py. For example, if we want to call the isObjectEmpty function from the compare.py module, the references will look like this. In this lesson we have shown that, if you want to call a function of a module at a specific location, you'll have to enter the whole path to the .py file in the module field. That is including the .py extension. Use variables when you want to make the outcome of Python function calls available to other steps in the flow. The variable created will be available throughout the whole flow, until the end. Always create attributes for all input parameters of the function with exact the same name. You can make direct calls to functions that are in a class by using the class name in the class field, but it is better to instantiate a class to a variable and use the variable in the other steps of the flow to reference to the class. This will improve performance and you will have access to the values of internal attributes of the class. You can call any installed Python package in module by setting the module field to the name of the package, that is without the .py extension. If you want to call a specific module of the installed package, you can do so by placing a dot and the name of the module after the package name. If you want to call a BPMN-RPA script module, you'll have to set the module field to the module name including the .py extension and without the full path to the module. This concludes our lesson on instantiating classes and optimizing performance in BPMN-RPA flows. Thank you for watching.